Hello, everybody, and welcome back to her Blueprints podcast, where we share stories from women engineering tomorrow. And I've got another guest here with me today, and I like to let them introduce themselves. Eddie, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. You can tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, what you've been up to.
Great. I'm Ellie Hubbard. I am the Managing Director of Iris Advisory, which is a boutique consultancy I started at the beginning of this year, which is great. I am an engineer. I'm an engineer by background, and I still play in that space, but we really focus on risk and decision advisory for critical infrastructure owners. So still within the engineering world, but a bit of a mix of other non-technical aspects and business aspects as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a huge year for you. Into the Iris Advisory. How's that entrepreneurship journey treating you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because yes, it's definitely been a change, but it hasn't necessarily been as much of a change as I thought it would be. And I think that I had never necessarily seen myself going down this path. I didn't have a career plan, but it wasn't part of the plan, the unspoken or unwritten plan. But I found myself in a decision where I was choosing to go down an alternate career. And I thought, why not now? If I'm not going to do it now, I might not ever do it. And I think the last few roles that I've had, both in engineering consultancy on client side and then working for more of a big four, have given me the skills that I needed to launch my own business. So it hasn't necessarily felt like as much of change as what I anticipated it to.
I'm sure that for a lot of people it sounds you don't want to use scary, but also intimidating. It's good seeing women making big moves like that. And if you were to kind of think about where your story starts, and you mentioned you didn't exactly have like a career plan, but how did you end up taking the engineering path in the first place? I did a little bit of LinkedIn stalking, and I know you studied electrical engineering.
Yes.
But how did you end up on that journey, on that path? What are some of the things that kind of drew you to the field in the first place?
I think this is going to be a running theme that I didn't have a plan when I was at high school either. Yeah. I really loved maths and science, but I also loved art and that creative side of things as well. And one of my teachers recommended I go into engineering, which I did, and I did probably a little bit blindly and started doing aerospace avionics engineering for the sole reason of I didn't think I would get into it, and I thought it would sound impressive to introduce myself as an aerospace engineer, which I quickly realized after doing a couple of years that it wasn't necessarily for me, but I still enjoyed engineering and the types of subjects that I was taking. So I took some time off and thought about what do I really want to do. And that was 2 years into uni, and as I said, I always really loved maths, so I did consider going straight down the pure maths role, but I also liked the practical applications of engineering. So I finished my university degree with a electrical engineering and maths degree. Just fell into it. And then I also the next step in my career happened quite smoothly as well, in that I found work experience as part of my undergrad process, and that was at Oregon, and then I started working there straight out of uni as well.
So you did it for a while, but I mean, because personally I skipped from several roles. Maybe some I said too quickly. I can do like maybe 6 months, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm liking this, and then if I find something else, I'll jump on. But I saw that you spent some time at Oregon, like quite some time, that's quite 7 years.
It was about a decade of my life. Not in the same role, but the first team and role that I was in Whilst I was still progressing, I was doing the same sort of role for about 7 years.
And then you went on to, was it KPMG as well?
I went in between. I was at SEQ Water.
And you were there for work as well. How was that, first of all, transitioning from the different roles, and then kind of generally like how you were able to do that?
I think for me, one of my personal values is around challenge, and when I'm starting to feel like I'm not being challenged in my role is when I start to think about maybe it's time for a shift. And that's probably one of the reasons why I stayed in my first role as a electrical engineer in building services for so long, because I was still getting challenged, I was still learning a lot and developing skills, but it did get to a point where I thought, what's next and where else can I learn and grow? And that's been a bit of an indicator for me on, when am I starting to get the itch of what's next? So the transition for me has always been exciting. It's always been, I've been ready to move, I've been ready to look for the new thing, acknowledging that there was going to be a bit of a learning curve in the next role and go through that period of, in a new role, you're in a new team, learning through that process.
And I imagine also the different companies as well, like company also is different. There's a lot to kind of get your head around.
Definitely.
You said something about when you reach that point where I feel like, okay, I think I'm not getting challenged anymore, and kind of I'm ready to move on to the next step. Could you kind of dissect that a bit for me and help me understand of when do you say, Jackie, pursue it now, and then we'll move on to the next need?
I don't think it's necessarily a prescriptive approach. I think a lot of it has to, for me personally, is around gut feeling. But I look for roles that I think I have probably about 60% of the capability to do now and still room for growth. I think when you are starting to be the expert in the room, or you're not learning from other people, or you're feeling like there's another area of curiosity that you want to explore, is when I've started to think about what's next for me. And that's hard to quantify, it's hard to put in practice. And that might be technical skills, which at some point in my career I've definitely made the decision on, I want to do something different technically, which is probably the fork in the road between engineering and more risk advisory. Or it might be, I want to learn in a different type of environment, which was one of the reasons why I made the jump from SEQ Water, more of an operational live environment, to KPMG and more of a manage with consulting type environment. So it's been probably driven by curiosity and opportunity led around what's out there at the moment.
You mentioned that you deal a lot with risk and said something about asset approval.
Yes,
it was asset what?
Asset management, but I like doing risk in spaces for people who own physical infrastructure. So it's still in that engineering world.
I was going to ask why risk and asset.
Great question. Risk for me is an area that is going to continue to evolve. Risk is my definition, and the international standard definition is all around uncertainty and the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And that is something where I think we all face uncertainty, and we're starting to see more and more uncertainty. So risk is an area for me that's exciting, because I think we're going to continue to grapple with, how do we understand this? How do we get comfortable with it? Whether that be at a business level or even just a personal level, how do you personally get comfortable with uncertainty and build that resilience internally? So it's probably one of those areas that I said, sparked my curiosity, and it still continues to, which is why I have stayed in the risk space.
Talk to me about a project that maybe you worked on or that you're currently working on, and kind of explain the risk perspective of it and the kind of work that you do with your clients.
Yeah, sure. One of the recent examples, I've been working with clients around thinking through security of their critical infrastructure, but not just from I think when people think security, they think of fences and cameras and electronic access, not necessarily just that physical security component, but how can a water utility, as an example, continue to provide water under uncertainty, but under threats like climate change or physical access or internal employees, or what we saw with COVID with impact to supply chain. So the work I've been doing with my clients in that space is really understanding what are all the range of those different hazards or threats that might impact you, and how are you prepared to either prevent a disruptive event from happening, or if something disrupts your service, how are you reacting and maintaining that so you're coming back to be able to provide what you've set out to do.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to relate it to the kind of stuff that you, and kind of trying to understand when like a deliverable kind of level, like what sort of stuff do you that's sort of trying to tap out in my day.
It's probably the distinction between the type of work I do now and the type of work that I did when I was in more of the technical engineering role, was the deliverables in the technical engineering role sort of dictate a lot. You know, I was doing layout drawings and schematics and drawings that could be issued for construction and go off, and something could be physically built from it. Whereas the type of deliverables that I work on now are maybe perceivably much less exciting, but they are documentation. But the real value is not necessarily the documented output, it's taking people through the process to make them think through different scenarios and build their own comfort and confidence in reacting. So that's the part that I enjoy, is how do you take people on that journey to build that maturity and capability. And the document is just the point in time of this is the process we've been on. So an output might be a risk register, or it might be a presentation to a suite of executives around what has happened and what the change has been. So it's very different deliverables compared to technical engineering.
Yeah, interesting. I imagine, because when you talk of uncertainty, like there's so many things that could potentially go wrong, and you see a great in terms of a project and stuff. And so like just in general thinking about things that could go wrong, what are some of those things that are key or that keep recurring, that you're like, maybe this is something that you need to keep your eye on?
Yeah, it's probably different from a project landscape versus more in a business landscape, because I think in projects people are concerned with time, cost, and schedule or money or value. So they're definitely the recurring things in project land. How do we deliver it on time, on budget, and get the right quality output that we expect it to? In more of a business landscape, the recurring things are around people, like how do I maintain the capability and capacity of my people and my workforce, and attraction and retention of people. Technology, how do I understand my existing approaches to managing digital services or technology suites, and how that might change over time. I think there's a big thing around that, the change and the rate of change. Supply chain, I mentioned before, around who are we reliant on externally and how do we maintain those relationships. And then there's just the physical assets as well. So we've got existing assets that might have been sitting in the field for 20 years, and what's their end of life? When are they going to fail? How do we maintain them? So there's a whole range of different things that those would consistently pop up across industries that own and operate assets.
You mentioned something about retaining employees, and very interested in understanding work culture.
Yes.
And, so how do you retain employees? Yeah.
At the moment, my employee is myself. So, but in the past, retention for me is sort of the side effect of positive culture from my perspective. I think just treating people like humans. I know that they're there to do a role, but we're all humans at the end of the day. We have our own lives outside of work as well, and we all bring different strengths to a role. So being transparent around role expectations from very early on, from when you were doing that recruitment process, being clear on expectations, I think helps set a scene for a successful relationship both ways. And then, as I said, we're humans, so I think it needs to be a two-way street. So in previous roles, my management style has been to have dedicated times just for professional development, but also just for the employee to raise anything that was bothering them, or conversely things that were going really well for them that they wanted to celebrate, and then project leadership on top of that. So letting people have a role that they're comfortable with or that they want to stretch in depending on the personality. So I think retention is challenging because it looks like different things for different people. Different people are all driven by different things and want different aspects out of their work life. So I think being very clear of what does this person want and what's important to them, and then how you work with them.
I know you mentioned that you're on that.
I am, yes.
And how are you managing that you've been like so successful with your career? And it's always interesting for me, and perhaps also like a learning point to, like, I do want to go ahead in my career. I do want to be a mother and things like that. So how do you kind of like balance it, or how do you make sure that work is not overspilling too much in how you want to show up as a mother?
Yes, yeah. This is a very deep question. I deferred the decision to become a mother until I was comfortable. This is perhaps a cynical view, but until I was comfortable that if I did stagnate in my career, I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I know that that's maybe not the best approach. People have different approaches, but I wanted to get to a point that I was happy that if I stayed at that level for the next 10 years, I'd be okay with that, which I did. And then when I returned to work, the plan was always that my partner would be more of a stay-at-home parent and I would go back full-time. But the reality of that and I think what I wanted out of being a mother didn't really align with me. So that was one of the drivers for going out on my own as well, to have a bit of a better balance for what days am I going to dedicate for work and career versus what days am I going to dedicate for home life, which for me at the moment looks like 3 or 4 days working so that I can still have a dedicated day during the week purely for being with my child, and then have weekends as well.
Yeah.
So it's I did actually have a plan for how I wanted to tackle that, but it didn't necessarily turn out how I thought it would when that became a reality. So being flexible, I think, but I thought I had flexibility in my career, which I did for my lifestyle prior to becoming a mother.
Yeah.
But it has really challenged me in terms of what's important to me and where do I want to dedicate my time.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about your kind of early education as well. I know you mentioned that when you were in high school, you were kind of pushed towards that, and maybe there were people that could saw that you were doing something that kind of encouraged you. And what would you say to someone that's generally thinking about the path, knowing that it's not that easy, or maybe there are not so many women who are doing it?
I go back and forth on this answer, because I definitely benefited from having, as you said, people supporting me and people seeing what my strengths were and suggesting career pathways, which I think is important to have that sponsorship and mentorship. I have found other schools of thought around being very open and transparent about women or girls entering in the pathway around some of the challenges they might face as well. So I go back and forth in terms of how do you get the right balance of encouragement with reality that they might face as well, because I probably didn't anticipate the gender imbalance until I walked into my first lecture hall of 300 people, and there were probably about 20 girls and women in the room. So I don't think I would have made any different choices, but I probably have been a bit more aware of what I was going to encounter. So I think when talking with girls, definitely encouraging them to play to their strengths and to go down a path that might appeal to them. I don't think we should be putting barriers in place, but I think we should probably be still talking about the challenges as well.
Yeah, and what are some of those challenges?
I think
you are being frank about.
Yeah. I mean, being a minority in a group, my experiences from a gender lens is challenging because your voice is not the norm in that group, and so it can feel like an uphill battle to get your voice heard. Has been my experience. I have felt at times that I have had to perform higher than my peers to be able to be received at the same level. So I feel like you have to have an unfair advantage of talent to be able to succeed in some environments. But that's not all environments, and I've definitely had the converse of that where my differences have been celebrated, and it's probably given me opportunities and pathways that weren't available to my peers as well. So yeah, I think definitely challenges around getting your voice heard, and being in an environment where differences are celebrated, because if you are a different voice or you have different views on things, I think personally that's a strength. I like to surround myself with people who have different views, so I'm not in an echo chamber, but not all cultures celebrate that. So trying to find the right environment where your differences are seen as a strength, not a weakness.
What is that feeling like when you're in a space where you're kind of appreciating where the piece of being that? And I'm asking because quite often we talk a lot about this is what it looks like when somebody's not taking you seriously, or and there are spaces where they do appreciate or do try to make sure that everyone is business into one heart. So what did that look like for you?
I've been in environments where I felt like both my gender and probably my age has played against me. Early in my career, I had quite a fast progression compared to others, and so what it looked like for me at that point was being in a room of people who were much more senior to me and mostly men, but feeling respected and heard. So it's interesting because it's probably the absence of those other negative experiences you might see. It's almost to the point where you don't notice that you're different in the room because you're being treated equally or with the same level of respect that others are. There's probably if you keep flipping it and push the pendulum all the way to the other side, there's probably some radical inclusion where you're being actively called on. So, Mercy, I've noticed that you haven't spoken or contributed to the room. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think sometimes that sort of overactive involvement is necessary from leaders. I think it has to come from leaders in the room to make sure that you're promoting that environment where everyone's voice can be heard.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. Because I worked for a bit in Uganda before I moved to Australia. And sometimes when I'm explaining to people how different the work culture is here, I'm like, sometimes I don't even feel that I'm a woman or that I'm black, or like I know I am, but you get, and like like back home, I'm like it always felt like I was the only like I was the only one in ways that you're not even confident enough to speak up, or is there something during meetings? And someone said to me, like sometimes a good manager will say, hey Mercy, you didn't say anything, what do you think? But you're not always gonna find
that's right
the manager, so you kind of have to build that muscle to say, I'm gonna say something, be safe, and kind of celebrate the small wins. What can you do, like on your own, to kind of take responsibility or take charge and be like, these are some of the things I'm going to do, this is how I'm feeling, to kind of get people more aware or even contribute more despite the feeling that those feelings.
I am probably not the best person to ask with this, because I think often women get pushed in a bucket of, you're suffering from imposter syndrome or you need to speak up more. And I haven't had that challenge really. I think I grew up in a home that had a lot of, I was filled with self-confidence, and so I am rarely in situations. This sounds very cocky. It's like saying this all that.
That's the truth, right?
I'm really in situations where I have that. But I guess when I have been in situations where I've been doubting myself or felt like I'm struggling to speak up, having confidence in my own capability and reminding myself of my own capability and strengths has helped me. And also just, you have been invited into the room for a reason. So if you are in the room, you deserve a seat at the table. You can do really tactical things around, I know we're both sitting cross-legged, but if you're at a meeting table, you can open yourself up. I spread my books out. I take up the space that I think that I should have, and it's on someone else to, like, it's the equivalent of man spreading, I guess, in a corporate setting. But you're there for a reason. You deserve to take up space. You can obviously adjust that space if you're taking over someone else's, but I think you probably are not even going to come across with that over cockiness or over confidence space. You will just present as that you deserve to be there and you know what you're saying.
And what does it look like every day that you stuff that you're doing now with Sorry?
I am working with clients every day, whether that be remotely or in their office. And the type of work that I'm doing, I'm sort of pseudo embedded in their teams. So I'm working on a range of different clients at the moment. So my days might be split for different clients depending on the time. And that looks like, some documentation that we spoke about before, but lots of conversations, lots of better understanding areas of uncertainty for people, trying to translate that in a way that's consistent across different teams, a bit of data analysis, so Excel spreadsheets and data analysis, and some other towards the end of engagements, presentations around what was the process that we've gone on, what were the outcomes and the value realized, and then how can the organization embed that further, or what are the next steps for them.
What kind of advice would you give to women who are generally working in the engineering field or thinking of starting something of their own as well?
That's a very broad question.
So that you can go in direction.
I think engineering for me is all about problem solving. So getting access to wicked, tricky problems has enabled me to grow my skills, both from a technical lens, but then also from some of the other soft skills that I think more and more people are realizing that benefit from. So I would encourage people to get out of their comfort zone and try and work on messy problems that they don't necessarily know what the answer is going to be or where they're going to go, and have that as an opportunity to build skills and build relationships as well. So just challenging to get out of the comfort zone.
Awesome. I just see a lot of your personality, like the presence that you do, and there was, I think, one recently where Enrico was Engineers Australia,
I went to a recent conference at Q-Water run by the Australian Water Association.
How was that?
It was great, yeah. Highlights. Probably one of the highlights was I was involved in a yarning circle, which was facilitated by Oricon and a community of practice pulled together from local water utilities. And I haven't had too much exposure to, I've never been involved in a yarning circle before, and it was all around what does caring for country mean for you, and how can you better understand the role that traditional owners have in a engineering landscape. And that was surprisingly powerful and probably not what I was expecting out of a conference. So that was definitely a highlight for me in terms of it opened my eyes a little bit around potential blind spots and just another area that I could learn more about. So that was definitely a highlight. And yeah, just seeing how I think conferences in general are great opportunities to see how people across the same sector, so this was all in the water sector, are dealing with the same sorts of problems in different ways. So just great learning around generally the sector as a whole across Australia are experiencing the same sort of challenges around population growth, climate change, needing to continue to provide water in a scarce environment, and they're all tackling it in slightly different ways. So it's a good learning opportunity.
We'll wrap up with some fan questions. Kind of go a little bit into, but however. And I like to begin with best piece of advice you ever received.
Best piece of advice I've ever received. One of the mantras that we have in our household is get out of your head and into your body.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
When I'm struggling or I'm overthinking something or I feel like I'm mentally stuck on something, I remind myself to just move. So I just try to go for a walk, go to the gym, just try to not think about the problem at the point and just do something completely different. And often I find that either relaxes me or it helps me think through things from a different angle or just lets you unconsciously process things. So it's a big advocate for the body-mind connection.
I saw something, I think it was on the Instagram, that was along the lines of, if you think you're stressed, like do something, or like go to the gym, or like take a walk, and if you're still stressed, then you're actually stressed.
Yes.
I like it. Yeah, that's kind of true. What's an engineering challenge that you think will define the next decade?
The next decade?
Yeah.
I think we are seeing disruptive technology like AI hitting us at a rate that people don't know what it's going to mean for us. So that process of how do we adopt it in a way that we can govern it without knowing what the outcome's going to be, in a similar way that social media kind of was released and we didn't know what the impact would be on people. We're trying to retrofit rules and restrictions on that. I think we'll see the same thing from an AI perspective.
Yeah. When it comes to risk, I feel like that's right up your alley. Conceptualizing what that. What's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I don't get much unwind time because I'm a mother of a toddler. But movement. I like to get out and move, even if that's at a park, climbing up. Yesterday I was climbing up playground equipment and going down the slides. So again, that connecting with your body and just moving is a big thing for me. And there's not much downtime at the end of the day, but if I'm driving somewhere, I like listening to music loud with my windows down. So that's, again, maybe a distraction, but it's a good way for me to work through anything that is on my mind.
Common engineering myth or stereotype that you'd love to debunk?
That an engineer needs to look like a certain person or look and feel like a certain way. You hear sometimes women get told you don't look like an engineer. So what does an engineer look like? There is no look that an engineer needs to have. So I think that's a myth.
if you could teach one engineering concept to everyone in the world, what would it be? And why?
Probably how to define a problem. I think that sometimes we get caught up in movement, as I was talking about before. I can get caught up. I have an action bias, so I can get caught up in movement and trying to jump at solutions. And I have to force myself to come back and understand what is the problem that I'm trying to solve. And I think that you can apply that in both a professional setting and a personal setting. What is the actual root cause of what's going on here? What's the problem we're trying to solve? What are we ultimately trying to achieve before we jump and launch into anything? So having a really clear understanding of the current situation and the problem, as well as what are the objectives? What am I trying to achieve? What does success look like? I think it's helpful in both that business setting and, even when you're setting personal goals, good to have in that sort of start and end point.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for making that time. And I hope I can have you on again.
Great.
Yeah, I mean that. I'm not just saying that because I have so many follow-up questions, but that's all for today. And until next time, thanks for watching.